red flag for me personally is when a vendor jumps on a call and goes, what is your strategic plan for 2025 and beyond?
Account managers that are newer to this might be confused about where to draw the lines. So how would you differentiate those two things?
As accountants, we've got to make a difference. We've got to change the way that we operate on a daily basis. We've got to get specific about what we're trying to achieve with each bit of software and what impact that will make to our firm and our clients. So if you imagine, if I go to a context and I say yes to every single person that wants to speak to me, what's the opportunity cost? I don't see my kids, I don't see my wife on a night.
Your team need to be building relationships with people that you feel have got Valued's best interests at heart, rather than just their sales number, because they need to hit that or they're not going to be your account manager for very long, right? So they've got to strike that balance.
Just get to know Stephen a little bit, get to know Valued a little bit, and find out what's important to both of us.
That, I suppose, is the art of being a great account manager, isn't it?
I've got a strong belief if I wouldn't have a beer or a coffee with somebody, I'm not going to do business with them.
This week, we're speaking to Stephen Paul, and Stephen has a ton of experience in the accounting tech space, having been the fastest growing Xero partner at the first UK Xerocon back in 2012. He's dealt with hundreds of different apps and figured out how he can make them work for his practice and for his clients. We talk all about how he sets the vision for Valued, how he gets the team behind that so that they can be driving tech as well. But crucially, we also talk about what he's looking for from vendors and from account managers. So this is essential viewing for any account managers that are showing up at events over the next few weeks and in this event season, and for accountants that are looking to get out of the gates with their digital transformation strategies.
I'm Stephen, I'm the founder and MD of Valued. We've been in this tech space since 2011 and it has changed so much over those last 15 years. And one of the things that is so critical to me is about actually finding the why and the purpose, and the why and the purpose of why we are trying to do what we're trying to do as accountants, but also why we want to use bits of software, what the difference is, how will that impact our firms, and more importantly, how it affects our clients as well. So it's really important to me that you get the right strategies in clients, in software, in your firm to get things right from day one.
That's so interesting, because in the last episode, we were talking with Phil Hobden from Silverfin about how firms can often get themselves in a mess by just going off and chasing the shiny objects and not doing exactly what you've described there, not figuring out what their purpose is, not really having an intentional direction of where they're moving and things like that. And I think one of the challenges to doing that is because the owners of firms are often fee earners as well. There's a million and one things to do, and it can be difficult to establish that direction, I suppose. So I'm really interested to find out, how have you managed to carve out time to go and define that purpose and the why for you and for Valued?
I've not got this right all the way in Valued's journey. I've really messed it up at times. There's times that I've sat there and I came back from a Xerocon, I had a notebook and I wrote out all of the bits of software we had, and I tried to draw some lines to say what talked to what, how did each of these bits of software implement and work together, and realized that actually they didn't. That was the time where I was using 30 different bits of software, and it was like, this is crazy. Now, what I have done, which has made the biggest difference for me, is I have a no client Friday. So every single week, I do not speak to any clients. If there's an emergency, I'll take the client's call, but I have no meetings with clients. I have no meetings with the team. That is the one day where I focus on Valued. Valued is my number one client. And I do genuinely believe at times, what we do is, as professionals, we go to Xerocon, we go to QuickBooks Connect, we go to Accountex Digital Accountancy Show, and we've got client problems. You mentioned there, as a fee earner, how do you actually overcome this? We've got client problems, and as a fee earner, I'm thinking of clients' problems when I'm at these shows. What the vendors sometimes do, no doubt we'll talk about this, is they offer a solution. I'll then go, oh, well, that solution is going to work great for that client because it's going to fix their problem. Let's roll it out to every client. It's not about how do we actually roll it out to every client. We've got to get specific about what we're trying to achieve with each bit of software and what impact that will make to our firm and our clients, and actually give it some strategic thought. But it comes back to that, actually focusing on it on Friday, instead of having 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, an hour there, quick conversation with somebody in the team. Let's actually give it the time it deserves to be our number one client.
And that point around where you found a solution for a client and resisting the urge to roll it out to everybody, is immediately a disconnect, because I know that a lot of vendors will see that first client as the sort of green flag to roll it out, and they almost assume that if it's worked for one client, why wouldn't you roll it out to everybody? And
Yeah.
that sort of becomes their MO, right? That's ultimately the goal for the vendor, and so it's really important to, I think, resist that, falling into that sort of trap of right now we've got to do it for everyone. But I think it's a communication issue as well, right? It's just sort of being really clear with the vendor around what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you can't necessarily do that very well if you haven't got that sort of compass direction of where you're heading, right? By having that purpose sort of
Yeah.
locked down. But how important has it been getting your team around that as well, around that purpose and that vision?
Absolutely. It's the biggest problem that I had. And to be honest, a great example is this year. One of my team actually turned around at me and said, Stephen, you talked about Apron and you said you want to implement Apron, but we've done nothing with it. And I went, yeah, because we're using Dex and everybody's comfortable with Dex and they know Dex and clients know Dex, and it's going to be a big project to move from one to the other. And let's be brutally honest, it's because of cost. Yeah. And that is a big factor sometimes. Yes, you've got benefits and things like that, but why are we actually moving? Now, the interesting part that the team member followed up with me was, why did you not push it more? And I went, because I thought you'd just say it's another bit of software. It's somebody else he's met. It's another contact that he's known for years. So I didn't push it. Now, in reality, Apron, we've started to roll it out by getting the team to do it as opposed to me doing it. We're getting the team to do it, and it's picked up traction straight away. It's really picked up traction, because what I want to do is kind of a bit like when I go to Disney. Walt Disney illustrated what the vision of Disney was going to be. My role is to illustrate from a software point of view what the vision of Valued is going to be. It's not to actually go and draw the picture and color it in and do everything. It's to actually come up with, this is the vision, this is where we're going to be. Now, I'm going to go to Digital Accounts Show, I'm going to go to Accountex. No doubt I'm going to speak to some vendors that actually will be really great for Valued. But what I'm going to do this time, which is different to what I've done in the past, is I'm going to come back, I'm going to fill in a fact sheet on what the software does, how it could impact Valued, what we need to do, what the next step is, and then hand it over to a team member, what we call a system controller within Valued, for them to run with it, them to implement it. And I'm just come back with a recommendation, because actually I don't want relationships with all of the software vendors, because you're going to end up with failure to implement. So you've got to get that within the team. The team are the people that are actually doing the work. They need to know the software. They need to get the training themselves. Instead of all of that knowledge being in my head, it needs to be with the team.
You'll be coaching your team to start to build those relationships. And I think with the SaaS vendors and their sales folks, and clearly they're there because they're trying to drive business and trying to drive revenue, and they're going to do their job on that. But there is a scenario where, like we mentioned earlier on, where it's like, okay, great, we've got one client, how do we get them all? And that's their MO.
Yeah.
So clearly trust is a massive issue, because you need to be building relationships. You said your team need to be building relationships with people that you feel have got Valued's best interests at heart, rather than just their sales number, because they need to hit that, or they're not going to be your account manager for very long, right? So they've got to strike that balance.
Yeah.
What are the sort of things that you're encouraging your team to look for in those potential vendor Valued relationships? Or what are the red flags? What are the green flags that you're telling them to look for?
Okay, a red flag for me personally is when a vendor jumps on a call and goes, what is your strategic plan for 2025 and beyond?
Okay.
Oh, really? Yeah. And tell me how I can change your life, right? You know what? Stay in your lane. I'm going to stay in my lane. It's actually, how do we join that journey together, right? Now, if I've got somebody, I've already just met them today and they're saying, tell me your strategic plan, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time telling you my strategic plan. Get to know me, right? So my first bit of advice for the team and for me, just what's worked for us, is actually get to know the vendors. So get to know what their background is, where they worked, what impact have they done? Do you like them, right? I've got a strong belief if I wouldn't have a beer or a coffee with somebody, I'm not going to do business with them, right? Because actually, I want to do business with nice people. So you've got to get to know the person behind the account manager, behind that job title. You've got to, because when you do that, you're going to start to see a difference. I'm going to go back to my first account manager, Darren Glanville. He came with me, he sat with me, and he said, right, where do you want to be? It was one of the first conversations I had as Valued. Where do you want to be? Well, I want to start using software. Right, okay. What's the longer term plan? And we work together on a longer term plan. He used to ring me once a week. I used to ring him once a week. Every single week we would speak and we'd say, right, what's happening with the business? Are we on track? Are we off track? What else can I do to help you? What else can I do to support you? He was part of the journey. He's been part of that journey for a lot of years. Yeah. Somebody like you, Lee. I remember the first time I ever met you at Xero's HQ in Milton's Keynes. Yeah. And the discussions that we had, I can remember exactly where it was and all of that. It's because actually there's a bit of a history. We know each other. It's not just a job title. It's about how do we actually work together. And as soon as you get that working together, I want to help you to hit your target. You want to help me to grow my business. That's perfect. That's a match made in heaven. What I see too many times is vendors going, I've got a sales target to hit. I'm not going to tell you I've got a sales target to hit. We all know you have, right? We all know you're getting a bonus if you hit your sales target. Let's be brutally honest, right? And if we churn orgs or whatever happens, it has an impact. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about how you can help me. I don't need an account manager to be over me 24 hours a day, but I need somebody that's going to check in every month, every quarter, and have that prescribed areas of when you will check in during a year, but also know that you can pick up the phone, you can have a conversation with somebody at any point in time and say, I need a hand with this. Can you help? Can you support me? That's important bits for me. Yeah, I want the red flag is somebody that just comes in and says, what's your strategic plan? The green flag is somebody that actually wants to partner with me.
Yeah.
That's the big difference.
So for maybe account managers that are newer to this, that might sound like the same thing, right? Come in and go, what's your strategic plan versus
Yeah.
I want to work with you. If they're not as experienced, they might be confused about where to draw the lines. How would you differentiate those two things? What does that look like and sound like differently in your perspective?
Yeah. So the crucial thing is it's timing. It's genuinely timing, right? So I had a new account manager that came on last year, and within 30 seconds, how are you doing? This is who I am, and what's your strategic plan? And he was reading off a script, right? You could tell he was reading off a script. Actually, find out about me. Have a look on LinkedIn. Have a look on Instagram. Just get to know Stephen a little bit. Get to know Valued a little bit, and find out what's important to both of us. When we've got that, we can then make a longer term plan. We can start talking about the strategic plan, the strategic vision, because that part is important at that bit.
It's a really interesting point that you make there, because a lot of the early sales training that a lot of account managers will get will be ask questions, figure out what their goals are, the what keeps you up at night question, and then continue the sales process from there. But what they often don't do until they've got a bit more experience, which if you don't make your numbers, you'll probably never get to that experience because you'll be out the door before you do. But a lot of what you're saying here is about building trust, right?
Yeah.
It's about showing a bit of intent, showing that you care about the person opposite from you rather than you're just going through the motions. And Darren was absolutely a master of that. He genuinely cared about his customers, and it is a mindset rather than, I think, something that can be trained. But I think with you, I know that you've been very good with your side of that as well. And a lot of firms tend to be quite guarded, and won't build the trust. Where it's got to be a bit of a two-way street, hasn't it? Like they're there to help
100%.
you. They've got something they can help with, and you've maybe got to be open to that. Or if you're not, be fairly clear and say, look, this isn't for us, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I do is my key partners. So we're talking about Xero, we're talking about Dex, we're talking about Abram, we're talking about Fathom. Those are our key ones for every client has those services in there, or the option to have all of those services in there. I know all of the account managers that look after us really well, but also they also know our strategic plan for 2025. So they know what our sales targets are. They know what our new client targets are. They know the type of clients that we're going for. And we've been totally open and honest with them on that, because that's really important. Because you're right, and you made a really great point there. You get somebody new to the industry, they come in, they might have had one or two different jobs. Yeah, let's be honest. As soon as I get a new account manager, I'm going on LinkedIn and finding that there used to be X, Y, and Z in something that was totally irrelevant to the current job, 9 times out of 10. Or I'm looking at Instagram, or I'm definitely doing social media, looking at them. I'm also asking around, what do you think of Lee? Is he any good? What's this role? Yeah, actually, he's a good lad. Right, okay. And I want to help whoever that new person is to actually grow and develop. Because if I can help them to grow and develop, then they help me to grow and develop, and then we're all working together. It's that partnership, isn't it? It's like any relationship. Yeah, the first time I ever met Kate, you don't suddenly say, right, congratulations, we met. Hey, go on, right? No, you're building up the trust. You wouldn't suddenly turn around and go, let's get married today. No, right? You're getting to know that person, right? And that's the bit that's important, is you're actually finding out quirks, pluses, minuses as you're going along. How can you help each other? And I think that is something that's really, really important to me, is community. And I've banged this community drum for years. If I go back to 2011 when I started this business, community was huge because there wasn't that many apps. This is before bank feeds with Xero. This is before all of the funky stuff that we take for granted today. It was hard work, but it was really, really innovative at the time. Now, what did we do? A new app would come out there, and it went from like having no apps to 100 apps or 500 apps. It just spiraled within a matter of years. And the number of apps, we didn't have time to look at everybody's apps and to get to know all of these account managers. So we used the community. We talked to each other to say, how can we actually help each other to get the best apps? How can we actually work together to help our clients? And we would feedback, a bit like a Google review, but internally, on how we can help each other. And that was really, really important to me. That's starting to happen more now. That is starting to happen more, but it's about that relationship. It's about that trust. It's about working collaboratively, and that's important. So I've got a connection, let's say, with Gavin at Apron, but actually, if Gavin brings a new member of staff on, how do we actually help them to grow and develop as accountants? That could possibly
Agreed.
be something that would help. So if you imagine, so my connection, so let's say you've got somebody new coming in. So you got somebody new coming into the industry. They haven't got a huge amount of experience, but they're an account manager and they're coming in there. Now, if I've got somebody, let's say Gavin at Apron, who I've known for years, or David Tuck, or yourself, or whoever it might be, one of the things that you could possibly do as that experienced person is actually reach out to your accountants who you know and say, what support can you actually offer my new account manager to actually help them to learn to develop directly from an accountant, instead of it just following the sales process that whichever organization it is that has mapped it out, actually work with an accountant to actually grow and develop that person, that new person within the organization.
I guess the challenge is, would you be willing to do that for free, or would you charge for that as a service?
Historically, I've always done that for free. And I've done that for free. And a lot of accountants, and I know, have done that for free because they want to help. They want to give back. So the support with that person that has always helped me. So Darren's a perfect example. If Darren turned around to me and said, Stephen, I've got a new account manager coming on. Can they spend some time with you to understand what an accountant wants? Yes, not a problem. Pick up the phone, book some time in the diary. It's a given, because there's a lot of goodwill in that goodwill bank.
So that really points to the value of building that trust up then, doesn't it? And building that relationship. There's a lot of value you can go back and forth through that. And I know that you've done that exceptionally well, to the point now that you're actually acting for quite a few account managers, aren't you? And building out a unique service for account managers, because you understand their side of the table so well. But for someone that doesn't have that experience, so say for another accounting practice, how can they go about starting to build a relationship? Like, what should they be looking for from account managers, and how can they guide the maybe junior account managers to give them the sort of service that they need? Like, how can they can take control of that situation and turn it into an advantage rather than just saying, I don't like this account manager, I'm not going to deal with this company, because that may not actually be the most beneficial thing for them.
Yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. I think it's a really interesting point. And let's go back to how we actually get that relationship. It's typically the trade fair. It's typically because an influencer spoke about whatever product it is. And we just reach out to them. They just reach out to them. They go online. They have some sort of communication or some sort of touch point there. What then happens is you end up with a telephone call. But let's be honest, you go away from a trade fair, you go away from a Countex, and you end up with 50 calls. And you've got everybody trying to ring you within 2 or 3 days to hit the target to say, yes, I've made so many outbound calls.
Yeah.
Actually, find out who you had a good relationship with, who you spoke to, who seemed interested in your business. Actually, see if you can get them away from the stand. Say, can we go and grab a cup of coffee? Right? So you get them away from the stand where they're worried about who else is around, who else do they have to speak to, how many other contacts have they got to speak to. Let's say if you can just grab them for 5 minutes. If there is a party, grab them at the party for a couple of minutes and just see, actually, is there a synergy between what you're wanting and what they're able to provide? Once you've got that, you're starting to build that relationship. Let's be honest, we all screen our calls after Accountex, after Xerocon and various other than DAS and all that sort of stuff. Let's make sure that actually you get some time booked in your diary. Most of the account managers I know use Calendly or something like that. Let's get their link. Let's put some time in their diary, because actually that's the one that's going to make the biggest difference with you. So go to a trade fair and I'll go with a problem in mind. This is what I'm trying to achieve. This is the problem I'm trying to solve. I've got this contact. This contact says they're going to be able to help me here. Book some time in and then start to build the relationship. But what I would also do is use the community, use the network. And when you're sitting there at the bar, when you're sitting there having a cup of coffee, when you're walking around, just talk to your peers. Talk to the other accountants that are there, get to know them, and say, right, I've got this problem. What do you suggest? Because I've come off many a stage where I've been talking about different things within the industry. And I remember the last one I did at Accountex, I got asked, right, well, which networking group should I be part of? What tax software should I use? What's this? What's that? What did I do? Here's a list. Go and find it yourself. No, I didn't. Right. What I did was I actually said, come on, right? And I took them around the stands and I introduced them to my contacts on those stands. Because actually I want to give back, but I also want to help the next generation coming through. I want to help the other people. Now, there's a lot of people are going to try and monetize this. There's a lot of influencers out there that are getting paid quite a chunk of money to actually sponsor things or talk about certain things. But actually, to me, it's about having that credibility. It's about actually helping people, because I want to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, you know what, that software is the best for you. That person is the best for you, because it's genuine and it's worked for me. So ask other accountants what actually works for them. You're an introvert, you don't want to do that, send them a message on LinkedIn. Most of the firms I know are on LinkedIn. Just, can I pay for 15 minutes of your time to have a conversation, to pick your brains, to get your advice? Most accountants I know probably wouldn't charge for 15 minutes. They'd probably just give you the support. They just want to help, because we all remember what it was like on those early days where we didn't know what we didn't know. So we all want to help and support the next lot of people coming through.
That was a massive thing that I learned from Darren as well when I was sort of learning from him, is that idea of listen with the intent to understand rather than to ask the next question. And it is a huge mindset thing, and it's a difficult balance for account managers, because doing it the way that you're saying, which is the best way to do it, the most effective way to do it, and certainly in the long term, it takes time.
Yeah.
And in a business that's maybe PE backed, where you've got results to get out the door quickly, and you're absolutely right. When you come back from a show, you've got a list, you've got KPIs, you've got to have made the calls. It's very challenging to balance that. And that, I suppose, is the art of being a great account manager, isn't it? Is finding the way to do that, because you need to do the research. you need to look into people and make sure you post and say relevant content on social media, because to your point, you're going to look them up and are they talking about relevant things? You've got to find the time to do that. And it was a massive frustration of mine. I'd sit and do the research on a firm, but then they wouldn't answer the phone. So I spent 20 minutes on a call and then I got through. But I think the solution to that was upstream, because I should have found out, really, are they interested anyway? That if they were interested in the solution, is there a match? Are you fairly upfront with vendors if they're not a match for you? Like, if you're not interested,
No,
you're
I
fairly
am.
upfront. A lot of people are they want to be polite, but it just draws things out. I've found. What's your view on that?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So in the past, I would have took anybody's call. I would have done absolutely anything. And let's be honest, we're all on LinkedIn. And when we're on LinkedIn, we all get a connection request and then, can I send you something for free? And really, stop it. Yeah. I don't want your stuff for free that actually I'm never going to look at. Right. I want the relationship. Have a conversation with me first and then start to build it up. What I've actually got is I've got a policy now. If someone offers to send me something free twice without me responding, it's an automatic delete. Yeah, they've gone. I've just removed the connection on that. But in reality, what we've got to do is you've got to be kind to yourself. You've got to be kind to your family, your connections, whatever it's important to you. So if you imagine, if I go to Accountex and I say yes to every single person that wants to speak to me, what's the opportunity cost? I don't see my kids, I don't see my wife on a night, or I see them for an hour less, or whatever that time frame may be, or I put myself under pressure, or I don't talk to my clients when I want to talk to my clients. So actually, let's be cruel to be kind. Let's set your standout from day one. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm looking for. Is there a match? Yes or no? It's exactly the same as a relationship, isn't it? Let's be brutally honest. We've all got a type. Yeah. If something's not your type, you're not going to go anywhere near, right? So actually, why do we not do that in business as well? We should be. I've been reading a book called The Five Types of Wealth, Sahil Bloom. And I sat on the beach 2 weeks ago. I was in Lanzarote reading this book and watching the windsurfers and all that sort of stuff. And I started to cry. And the crazy bit was, I was like, why are you being such an emotional wreck here, Stephen? What are you doing? But actually, in reality, I started to cry because I had regrets. And I had regrets about all those times I'd said yes, when actually I wouldn't do that now. How much of my life I wasted? How much time have I not seen my kids growing up? How much time have I... Yeah. And you and I have had various conversations over the years about this, but actually, I now focus on what's important to me. And by focusing on what's important to me, I've got to be kind to myself and my own time. Yes, it's setting boundaries, but actually, you've got to be kind to yourself rather than boundaries. You've got to think, what's the opportunity cost and how do I actually push forward? I don't want to collect. Go back to that story. If I had 30 bits of software and I was trying to draw lines between what actually talked to each other and what worked, I don't need 31, 32, 40 bits of software. I need some that work really well together. And that's the crucial part for me, is actually how do we get software that works together, that helps me, helps my clients, and helps my team? How do we actually get the team to actually get involved in that process? Because as a principal of a firm, I can't do everything. Because I'm not being kind to my time. I'm not being respectful to my time. As accountants, we've got to make a difference. We've got to change the way that we operate on a daily basis. Because otherwise we end up with those regrets. Otherwise we end up burnout. It's a word that's bashed around a lot these days. We end up with burnout. I've been there. I've done that. It isn't pretty.
So to wrap up there, so there's some actionable stuff. There's loads and loads of value in there. But if we could boil it down to a couple of points. So let's say I am a reasonably young account manager. I'm going out to one of my first shows because we're in the middle of event season at the moment. And I really want to impress you or someone like you, make a great impression and give myself the best chance of being able to get to those meatier conversations with you about your strategy. If I want to earn that trust, what is the best way I can kick that process off the back of maybe getting your name at a trade show?
Great question. So one of the first things I would do is know who your top customers are. Know who your ambassadors are for your software. There was nothing worse than me going on to Xero's trade stand and getting told, do you want to use Xero? Right? I was like, what? Are you mental? Seriously? right? I've used it since 2011. I was one of the early ones, right? Know who your key people are. Know who actually is an ambassador for you. It's not who's the biggest seller, but know who actually who's a Raven fan for you, right? Do some research on them. Have a look on LinkedIn. Just see who they are. Have a quick Google of the firm. See what type of firms they are, because what you'll find is that most of the firms are kind of similar. Most of the people are kind of similar. And then actually reach out to us before the event. I've noticed you coming down. Can we grab a coffee? Can I pick your brains? I'm new to the industry. Can I pick your brains? Can I have that 15 minutes? Yes, not a problem whatsoever. I'll do that because I'm happy to help Xero. I'm happy to help the software. Reach out to the people within your business that actually have the experience. So reach out to the Gavins, to the Darrens, to the Lees, the people who've been there for a lot of years, the Cats, whoever it might be, and actually say, right, who should I be speaking to? And actually arrange those calls. Ask them if they'll do an introduction to you. That's not a problem. Most accountants will help. But then also don't just turn up at the bar with a credit card, and don't just try and win the favour by buying the round. Let's be honest. They don't have as many expenses as they used to, right? A lot of the companies, but actually don't try and buy the friendship. Actually have a connection. Listen, understand what the challenges of the firms are, because it's not necessarily what happens on the stand. It's what happens at the side events. It's what happens when you're having a cup of coffee. It's what happens when you're having a bite to eat at lunch. Just talk to people. We're all walking around with name badges on. Just talk to people. Have a quick look on your phone. Who's this person? What do they do? Where are they at? Understand what you can do. But the main part for me is actually see how you can help that person from day one. If any new account manager comes to me and says, Stephen, what can I do? What would be good for me to help you? Probably not a lot, but at least you've offered. At least you're trying to build a relationship. It's not about what's in it for me. It's about that synergy. And as soon as you've got that synergy, you can make a difference. So step one is your research before the events. Make sure you actually know who your critical people are, your influencers, not the critical, the influence people, the people that your Raven fans. And then also just strike up a conversation. But strike up a conversation that's sincere, not just a tick on a spreadsheet. Not just a tick to say, I've made that call, I've had that contact, I've collected that business card, I've scanned that badge. Actually have a proper conversation. It's amazing the amount of times that I go to these shows. 2023, I think it was. I walked into one show and people went, hey, you've been to a lot of gigs lately, haven't you? Yeah. I think you and I had this conversation because I'd seen Coldplay, I'd seen Pink, I'd seen Elton John, I'd seen all sorts of people within a very short period of time, but actually I posted on social media.
Yeah.
We had that conversation about the gigs. It wasn't about the business. It was about the music that I was into and what I was doing. Build up that knowledge, interact beforehand, and actually build team mentality early doors. It's not all about collecting that tick on that day. Build up the relationship for longer term. Invest something today for your future.
The thing I'd add just on top of that, which definitely supports what you said there, is that I used to try and suggest that my teams, when I was managing account managers, would go and actually watch some of the talks at the shows, because then they've got something relevant. Like, it's good for their own education to understand what are the sort of things that are being said, how are people responding to that, but also they've immediately got something to talk to you about afterwards, because they can't go and research everybody. Key partners, key customers, yes, they can't do that for everyone. So if they've got something relevant that they can talk about, well, what do you think of this talk, or have you heard enough about AI from this show, or whatever? At least it's something relevant to begin with, isn't it? We'll finish off with something a bit more fun that I ask every guest to do, which is, if for some bizarre reason someone ever made a film of the story of our little corner of the world, the accounting tech space, they made a movie of it, who would you want to play you?
George Clooney, obviously. You can see the similarity, can't you? Not. Great question, mate. Great question. You know what? It's somebody that's down to earth, somebody that can actually want to help others, but know what is important to them.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure who that person would be, but do you know, he couldn't, but one of the things that we actually did within Valued was we said which personality, which celebrity represented Valued, and we actually came
Right.
up with Sir Bobby Robson. Yeah, so
Really?
straight pair of hands,
Yeah.
cared, wanted to help the next generation, wanted to push forward, wanted to nurture, wanted to coach, wanted to, yeah. If Sir Bobby could play that, then yeah, I'll be delighted at that. Obviously, it's never going to happen, mate, but yeah.
Perfect. Stephen, if anyone wants to find out a bit more about what you're doing or wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can do that?
Yeah. So you can go on LinkedIn, just search Stephen Paul. I'm on there. I'm also on Instagram. I'm starting to post about my life. So what's important, my why, my purpose and everything on my personal Instagram. Just Stephen Paul UK on Instagram.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Cheers, Lee.